listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, another crazy day in Australian politics. The Nationals' leadership spill fell over and now apparently the coalition is set to reunite after another bitter split. But is it too little too late for the coalition? Experts say the broken party has blown itself up, with those polls showing support for One Nation continues to surge, with a growing number of Australians fleeing both the coalition and Labor. We'll unpack all the latest details in just a moment. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Monday, the 2nd of February. The Nationals' leadership spill has failed, with David Littleproud remaining as leader. Nationals MP Colin Joyce challenged Mr Littleproud in a party room vote this afternoon, but as widely predicted, did not have the numbers. Nationals Chief Whip Michelle Landry announced the decision but remained tight-lipped on the details.
What was the vote? We're not disclosing that, I'm sorry. We're all working together and, our goal is to work sensibly with our colleagues and just get on with being a good opposition against the Labor Party.
Thanks, Justice motion on rejoining the coalition.
Look, I'm not discussing any of that at the moment. We've just had that, so we haven't had any other business as yet.
Victoria Police admit accused police killer Desi Freeman could be dead as they start a new search in the hope of finding his body. Authorities are undertaking a fresh 5-day search of Mount Buffalo National Park. It follows a tip-off from a member of the public who heard a single gunshot. Here is Police Inspector Adam Tilley.
We're currently exploring 3 scenarios at the moment. The first scenario being that Freeman is dead in the Mount Buffalo area, either via self-harm or misadventure. The second scenario that we're exploring is he's been able to escape the area and he's being harboured by a person or people. And the third scenario that we're exploring, that he has left the area and he's on the run.
Desi Freeman allegedly shot and killed 2 police officers 5 months ago and has not been seen since. The UK Prime Minister says Andrew Mountbatten Windsor should be prepared to testify in the US about his links to Jeffrey Epstein. It follows the US Department of Justice releasing more damning documents over the weekend, including photos which appear to show Andrew crouching over an unidentified woman. So Keir Starmer says in terms of the former prince testifying, he says, quote, anyone who's got information should be prepared to share that information in whatever form they're asked to. The PM added Epstein's victims have to be the first priority. And Billie Eilish has taken out Song of the Year at this year's Grammys, the pop star taking the opportunity to call out ICE in her acceptance speech.
No one is illegal on stolen land. I feel like we just need to keep fighting and speaking up and protesting, and our voices really do matter and the people matter.
A number of other major artists also made political statements while accepting their awards, including Bad Bunny and Olivia Dean. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on another day of extraordinary developments in Australian politics. Just when you thought you'd seen it all, today the Nationals announced their leadership spill failed, and now the coalition is apparently getting back together with crisis talks between Susan Lee and David Littleproud. It comes on the same day a new poll showed support for One Nation is continuing to soar, with Pauline Hanson now Australia's most popular leader. To explain exactly what happened today and what's next for a political system in crisis is political editor with 7 News, Mark Riley. Riles, we've had a decision. There is no spill. With the Nationals, no leadership spill. Can you please explain this?
Sure, I'll do my best. I mean, they're pretty good, these guys, aren't they? Politics. They have a spill motion and they can't even get the spill. So they lifted the glass. There was nothing in it, nothing spilled. We understand the motion was put by Colin Boyce to spill the leadership. That is to put David Littleproud's leadership to a vote and that it lapsed. Now, how does it lapse? Well, probably without a seconder, or that the spill motion itself just didn't get the support. So given the chance to vote on David Littleproud's leadership, they said, yeah, nah.
Why would Colin do this? Because there's been a lot of speculation, even over the weekend, he didn't have the numbers. What was the motive behind this?
No, he was never going to have the numbers. So the motive was to make a point, which he's made, right? He's been at the top of news bulletins. He's been on the front page of newspapers. This fellow that a lot of people haven't heard of, but a passionate national who wanted to bring this to a head, who was really disillusioned by what the party had done, a succession of decisions over the past couple of weeks that have led to yet another breakup in the coalition, which he thought was very self-defeating for the Nationals. And he's right. It's a very silly move for the Nationals to break up again with the Liberals. So he's brought that to a head. And in doing that, what he's succeeded in doing is sacrificing a bit of himself, but he's happy to do that in his own standing, but for the greater good. The greater good being he's forced David Littleproud to go and talk to Susan Lee about putting the coalition back together. And that's where I think this heads now within the next 24 hours.
Okay, so in regards to if we can possibly try and explain what the heck is going on with the coalition. So they've separated, they've gone back to counselling, Colin's the counsellor, and now they've stopped consciously uncoupling, as Gwyneth would say, and now they're back together, correct?
Well, yeah, you put it really well. So, they had a trial separation, which didn't stick just after the election. It only lasted a couple of days. And so now they tried to separate again and it didn't take either. So maybe they've just come to the realisation they can't live without each other. It's really touching. Or is it just that they've been slapped in the face by the reality of what they've done, particularly David Littleproud, slapped in the face by the wet fish of reality, that this was a stupid move from the outset. It was a fit of pique. He should never have done it. And now he's coming crawling back saying, can we get back together again? That's what it looks like to me.
Okay, so in regards to reality, being slapped in the face by reality, a lot of people within the coalition would have woken up today and said, okay, this is really serious about One Nation. The Australian public is sending us a very, very clear message because those numbers regarding Pauline Hanson and support for One Nation, Pauline Hanson is now more popular than Barnaby Joyce and our current Prime Minister.
Yeah, that's right. And why is that? Because people are looking for a third way, Tash. And in all seriousness, this is quite a significant moment in politics, not just contemporary politics, but politics for Australia. There has been no third party in Australia that has polled 26% primary vote. Never. The DLP never did it. The Democrats never did. The Greens could only dream of it. They were all low teens at their peak. 26% for One Nation means there are a lot of Australians who are looking at the carnival of politics at the moment and saying, I can't vote for you, mob, and particularly on the coalition side. Why? Well, I mean, the lesson is this, really. If you act like an egotistically driven, self-obsessed rabble, the voters will believe you. And if you present yourself to them as utterly unelectable because you can't even run your own show, they will believe it. And people believe that at the moment. So they're going to another party. What's the other party or the other option they've got? One Nation. So there were coalition voters who couldn't bring themselves to vote for Labor, who will say, I can't follow my team at the moment. Yeah, One Nation, I'll go with them. But there's something else happening too, Tash, which is fascinating in Australian politics. And it is akin in a way to what's happened with Trump's MAGA movement in America and Nigel Farage's reform movement in the UK. You have disillusioned, disconnected, angry working class people and middle class people in blue collar industries and above, in service industries, who would normally find their natural home with Labor parties. But they're not at the moment. But they are hearing the chorus of grievance among themselves being echoed by people like Trump and people like Farage, and in Australia, people like Pauline Hanson and Barnaby Joyce. And they're saying what I'm feeling. So at the moment, I'm going to say I'm going to vote for them. I'm going to back them. Will this last? No, it won't last. Why won't it last? Well, what's One Nation's tax policy? I mean, don't you think an alternative party of government should have a taxation policy? And they don't. They have single issues, which are lightning rod issues, and they have a wonderful narrative of grievance that people can connect with and find solace in for a short period of time. But a bit like the Nats' relationship with the Liberals, they'll get over it. And I think voters will get over it. The number will come down. It'll be a good number, for One Nation at the election, at the next federal election, 2 years off, but it won't be 26%.
So, Rolls, in regards to Susan Lee right now, the focus has come off the Nationals. We know they've been doing the numbers behind the scenes over the weekend. We understand Andrew Hastie has pulled out of the race. Angus Taylor looks front and centre. Interesting to note, he was the opposition treasurer, and if the coalition was smart, they'd have their policy on economic management, because right now people were saying tomorrow interest rates will go up, cost of living crisis. That's where their point of difference is. Do you think it will change for the coalition or the Liberals if they have a change of leader?
Look, that's what's really interesting. What will change, Tash, is unity within the party. I guess that's the one thing. Do you, though, reward dissent by handing them power? That's what a lot of the moderates will be saying. Well, hang on now. But, let's just sort of sit back a bit. There's a lot of sound and fury at the moment, a lot of smoke and mirrors. But what is the real picture here? And the real picture is it's hovering there on the horizon in front of everybody. They're just not looking at it. The real picture is that the Liberal Party was smashed, roundly thumped at an election 8 months ago. That was with a Conservative leader, Peter Dutton, a very good politician, a very good communicator, whose suite of policy positions did not attract the Australian people. And now, 8 months later, having celebrated the fact that you've elected your first female leader ever of the Liberal Party, a bunch of blokes, in dark sunglasses, amassing on the morning of a funeral, want to take it down. Not sure people who aren't, predisposed to every shift and move in politics on a daily basis, when they connect with what's going on here, are going to see that as a good picture. I suspect not. So that's one thing. Second, Susan Lee's been hamstrung for the 8 months. She hasn't had a fair crack. They've been undermining, the right's been undermining her from day one in this existential battle, right? We've talked about it before, the moderates and the rights, the Menzian broad church of the Liberal Party, with the moderates on one side of the church and the Conservatives in the other pews across the aisle, have just been fighting each other incessantly for the past 8 months, because the Conservatives will never accept that a moderate woman has taken over control of the party as their figurehead. So they want to, ideologically driven. It's the broad church. It's not theology we're talking about, but ideology, which in some regards is just as extreme, then driving them to tear her down. How's that going to look in the broader electorate? Not to crash hot. And what does it bring, which is your question? Angus Taylor then comes as the leader. He was the guy who was largely responsible for a lot of that economic policy that was roundly rejected 8 months ago. So what does he bring that's fresh? He brings another bloke from the Conservative wing. This one's got hair. He's got a little bit less of the aggressive disposition that the Peter Dutton had, but pretty much the same bent on policy. So why is that going to go down any better with the people? And particularly when you think about the geographic dynamics of the electoral cosmology at the moment in Australia. The Liberals need to reconnect not with the far right and regional and rural areas, but with moderate, centre-right people in the suburbs, northern beaches of Sydney, which used to be blue ribbon Liberal territory. Now, absolutely and utterly coloured teal. And Wentworth as well, so the southern part of the harbour. Same in and around Melbourne now. Tim Wilson won one back for the team, but the Teals have taken that ground from the Liberal Party. And they think that, right, that's where it is. That's where the battle is for us. Let's go over here and fight here. Who are you fighting for? They're not there. They're over there.
Do you think this goes to the core of why so many Australians are disengaged with politics? Because even after that election, the Liberal Party seems to have learnt no lessons. It's not about the electorate. It's not about actually making a difference for Australians right now. It's about ego and politics and backstabbing, which the Labor Party was undergoing a couple of years ago.
Sure, and that is, to be fair, that is politics. That is the pursuit of politics. That's the world that I've lived in the last 35 years. It is this combustible mix of ego and self-belief and personally driven ideologues and too much testosterone that explodes from time to time. That's politics. But the people who are successful in politics are those who can deliver the element that subdues all those primary functions, and that is victory, that is success, that is a win. It's always more magnified and more dangerous in opposition. It's just in this case, it's come to a volcanic eruption in the coalition parties where it's the Hatfields and McCoys. They're blaming each other and they're fighting, but they're not too sure what they're fighting over. And I can tell them, you're fighting over the spoils of defeat. Mm. And this is why people who are looking at politics in Australia at the moment are looking away, because for the health of our democracy, we need a viable, functional, working opposition. It holds a light to government. It illuminates those nasties that live in the shadows of every government. It keeps them honest. It keeps them accountable. And at the moment, we don't have that functioning opposition. And that is very unhealthy for the Australian democracy.
Ros, I'm glad you brought up that point, because right now, one of the happiest people in Australia would be the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. And what is concerning right now, we're on the eve of another expected interest rate increase where people are absolutely at the brink. They can't afford house and contents insurance premiums. They can't afford to insure their car. They can't afford to pay rent. They can't even find a home, let alone buy one. Cost of living crisis, electricity bills through the roof, supermarket bills through the roof. So literally, he is not being, Anthony Albanese I'm talking about, is being held to account for all the promises about making life easier for Australians.
And he was to an extent at the end of the last year, right? And that's when he started to come back to the field a bit. That we've spoken about this before. The Labor victory is very broad, but it's still shallow. That's not to undermine the extent of it. It was an extraordinary victory, but it's still quite shallow. So not much has to turn to flip seats in some areas for an opposition party or a non-government party, we might say these days. So he was on the back foot after the Bondi massacre and looking vulnerable, under the most intense pressure of his prime ministership and all those issues that you raise, which are, in terms of political targets, about the size of the side of a barn, the cost of living crisis, the pressures on renters, the inability of generations of young Australians to believe that they'll ever be able to afford a house, the fact that the RBA will be considering today and tomorrow whether to increase interest rates, and there's a real possibility of that happening. Equities, people's assumed wealth in their superannuation and their nest eggs now being blitzed every day in volatile markets. All these things, inflation breaking out, and with domestic factors also feeding into that. So all of these things are targets the size of the side of a barn. Instead, the coalition shoots itself in the foot. I mean, it's a very special talent. But the people need the coalition to talk to those central issues. And to do that, they just need to get together and sort their stuff out and start communicating, not with themselves, but with voters, those people who need to hear from them about the alternatives in the Australian government.
It's another extraordinary day in Australian politics. We appreciate your expert analysis as always. Thanks, Riles.
See you, Tash.
That was political editor with 7 News, Mark Riley. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram @The Briefing Podcast. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company.